Good morning, everybody. I was actually kind of expecting an ironing board because that's what I've been practicing off of in my bedroom. I think this will do, though. Thanks, Frank, for the invitation and the introduction as well. Like I said, or he said, my name is Bob Rasmussen. I have a lovely wife, Cassie Ryan, 10 years, actually in a couple weeks. It's a picture of our family, the dog Samson, and we actually have one other person that's coming along, and we have a baby due in September. So, not shown in the picture. I know, isn't that great? Isn't this a good picture? I love this picture. Some people might recognize it. It's actually our Christmas card, and we only sent it out to like 20 people or so most of you probably didn't get it. And if you do get it, it'll probably be the same one next year because we do one once every 10 years. It was actually the first one we've sent out. We're kind of good like that. So I was asked to speak on Noah, Faith on the Water. And in thinking about the story, there's a lot of similarities I could have done in my life. How can I apply this to what I do? Okay, I work at EB, Ark, boat. Nah, maybe not. Gave details. I work on a lot of details on the boat. Okay, maybe not. I don't even think the Ark was a boat technically because there's no propulsion system. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, but there wasn't even oars or paddles, so it was just a big floating barge. But in thinking about the story, I started to think of a slight parallel that I do have in my life. And one thing I didn't mention about myself is that I am from New Jersey, and I know you guys can all be thankful for that. But this is the house I grew up in New Jersey. It's the house my parents currently live in. It's located right on the Jersey shore, about a block off the water. And in thinking about how does that have anything to do with Noah? Well, in October of 2012, this is a picture of the house. This was actually taken a few days after Hurricane Sandy. So as you can see, the water completely is covering the house. At this point, about a day or so after the storm, at the highest point, the water was up to your knees if you were standing inside the house. So you can imagine the devastation that happened to the home. It was a one-story house, so they lost completely everything. So if you could just walk through your house really quick in your mind, knees down, that's what you lost. Essentially, was gone. So I threw some other pictures up here. On the right, that's essentially 2 to 3 feet, I would say, of seaweed, garbage, pizza boxes, you name it, just piled up against the house. And what's not shown in the picture is other homes next to us with 30-foot yachts, jet skis wedged between sheds and homes. It was a mess. Inside the house was mud all over the floor, smelled kind of like dead bluefish that had been rotting for a while. But the reason is not to put the parallel of Noah, flood, Brick, New Jersey, flood. It's more on the faith portion. And what I saw when I went down there, I got to spend a week helping my parents clean up, is that my parents had extreme faith through this ordeal. And it wasn't just the faith that I saw for that week. I use the Message version of the Bible sometimes to kind of get a different perspective. And the Message says the fundamental fact of existence is that this trust in God, this faith, is the firm foundation under everything that makes life worth living. It's our handle on what we can't see. So faith is something inside of us that we have to believe in something that we cannot see. A good way for me to explain it to myself is a movie clip. I'm going to go back to the movies here a little bit. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And I have the clip here just to show you what exactly is a good definition of faith. So if we can just show that real quick and we'll talk about it. Indy, and it has to get across this crevasse here.
Only in the leap from the lion's head will he prove his worth. It's impossible. Nobody can jump this. Ah! Indy! And you must hurry! Come quickly! It's a leap of faith. You must believe, boy. You must believe.
Isn't that a great illustration of what faith really is? As you saw, Indy had no idea how to get across, but it was that first step that he had to take, that trust, right, in something that made him take it, but he didn't see. We could see from our vision that there was in fact a bridge there, but he didn't see. And that's something that we have to always remember, that, you know, in terms of faith, God is the one who can see what's going on and not us. So to further define faith and waiting, I broke waiting down into two different sections. I feel that we can wait two different ways, passively and actively. Passively waiting. So before I begin into what I think passively waiting is, a quick illustration on passive waiting. I had the recent wonderful pleasure of having to go to the Department of Motor Vehicle. We've all been there. So you walk in and you think that you're going to beat it. You finally know how to beat the system. I'm going to get there right before they close. Man, what a bad idea that is. Get there, you walk through that little old line just to get to the first guy who's got the happiest smile on his face. And then he finally makes sure you have all your paperwork, and he gives you the piece of paper, and it's got a ticket number. Great, I got my ticket. You go and sit down, and then there's a sea of people. All right, so you got to stand up first and then find a seat eventually. Then you look up and you see that the ticker tape has the numbers, and you look at your number and you realize that your number, whatever, 50 plus, right, after where is up there, and you're like, oh man. So you look at the numbers, you see them change, and you look at your tape, your piece of paper, you look at your watch, back and forth. You do that over and over again. I average about an hour. I don't know about you guys. But in that time of waiting, I have faith that I'm going to get called, right? Unless something happens, the state decides to shut down the DMV, I know I'm going to get called. I have faith in that. But I did nothing in that waiting period to get me there any better, any faster. I didn't learn anything. I learned a lot about the people around me and all the issues they have. Most of them, which is crazy, most of them are getting their licenses back, but that's another story. But that is passively waiting. So passively waiting would be sitting around waiting for things to happen. It could also be wishing things will happen but not doing anything about it, wanting results without putting the effort in. I've heard a small quote saying passively waiting is having a whole lot of wishbone but no backbone. So the second type of waiting that I like to talk about is actively waiting. And this is the kind of waiting that I'd like to key in today on Noah. And another illustration. So I told you my wife and I are pregnant with our first child, 7 months, 7.5 months, into it. I'm remembering these dates. It's really hard. And we have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. I remember that too. So actively waiting. So I have two choices as a husband and a future father to make through this 40-week ordeal. I can passively wait for the baby to arrive. I know it's going to arrive. They told us a due date. They check this picture and they look at the growth and all that stuff, and we know when the baby's coming. So I can sit around and do nothing, right? That's one option I have. Or I could actively wait for her to come. That's a girl, by the way. I just gave it away. No one was supposed to know that. No, just kidding. I might slip with the name too if you give me enough time. But I have two choices. I can passively wait or I can actively wait. So what can I do while I'm actively waiting? Well, first thing that comes to mind is I can be in prayer. I can be in prayer with my wife daily. I can be in prayer about the two of us, that we can grow as a couple and be supportive parents. I can pray for our daughter as well, and that she'll grow to come to know the Lord someday. I can also be supportive, right? That's a good one. Going to Babies R Us. I think I'm on trip number 7 right now. And picking out all the lovely stuff that I have to lug back upstairs and then put together with plans that were made in another country. And I swear, as an engineer, they don't make any sense. I can be doing that. That's a lot of active waiting. I can paint the room. I can put all the furniture together, paint the room, get all the stuff, and start to lug all the stuff up because now she can no longer carry things. So I can be doing all that kind of stuff, which is actively waiting, right? I'm preparing myself for the child to come. I'm doing something about it. So actively waiting is hopeful that the answer is due to arrive any minute, expecting the problem to be solved at any time. It's doing, it's action, and it's also seeking God's will as to what the next steps are, or listening for God's instructions. So let's turn to Noah, right? That's what this is all about. In Noah's faith, he actively waited. And we see this throughout the text, that Noah actively waited. I'd like to start first with Noah's background. If we it'll be up here, but Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 through 9 says that the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. So we see 3 things here that, first off, Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Noah was a righteous man. We also see that in the text. And that Noah walked with God. These are 3 key attributes that place Noah in favor with God. At this point, the world was wicked. God wanted to destroy the world with this flood. But yet he found favor in the eyes of the Lord, Noah. And he was a righteous man. So how did Noah actively wait? So if we turn to our key text, Hebrews 11:7, says, by faith Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with his faith. So we see that Noah built, right? He built the ark. He also condemned the world. These are two things that Noah had done based on this text alone. And one I'd like to focus on is that Noah built. He built the ark. So I'd like to continue reading in Genesis chapter 6, verses 14 through 22, where the Lord talks to Noah and says, so make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening, 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I am going to bring floodwaters on the earth and to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has the breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons, and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. So I got to put myself in Noah's shoes. At this point, God sends these commands to Noah. I can guarantee you Noah had no idea how to build an ark, let alone even know what a boat was. We know from the Bible that there really wasn't any rain at this point. So I don't know how he would have even thought of building a boat or an ark, but we know that God gave him the command. God gave him the instructions. And Noah actively prepared for this flood by building the ark and following God's detailed design. So let's jump into some of these details that the Lord set forth for him. We know that the ark was built of cypress wood. That was one thing that the Lord called Noah to build it out of. I don't know what other woods or trees were around at that time, but we do know for a fact that cypress wood is in fact rot resistant. Pretty good wood to build a boat out of, I would think, or an ark, I should say. We also know that it was made, or is to be pitched inside and out. This is a form of ancient waterproofing, right? So again, not sure if Noah would have known that, but the Lord did. We also know that the ark was to be 300 by 50 by 30 cubits. So in United States standard terms, 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet tall. I was kind of intrigued by the size of this boat. First of all, it's a wooden ship boat, so it's kind of large for that. And I actually, in looking it up, it's actually the largest wooden ship on record to have been built of this size, made of wood, that is. And also, on top of that is looking into the naval architecture of the actual dimensions of this boat. There's a ratio between the length and the width and the height of the boat, and it actually proves to be an extremely inherently stable design on the water. I got to watch some videos on this, and there was some testing done in some test pools in a lab in England, and they were simulating storm conditions with an ark built like this, and it was extremely stable, and they were shocked. So we got to give our credit to Noah for that one, right? Absolutely not. It was God. God was in the details. One thing I'd like to share, kind of a funny little anecdote. I was on the Builders for Christ trip, and every day they kind of threw out these anecdotes that kind of were funny but yet true. And one that they said one of the days was, God built the ark and humans built the Titanic. And my friend Dave Humiston actually shared that in the first service too. And it's true. You know, God built the ark. There was no flaw in what was done. But yet, Noah trusted God through that, and he was actively building that ark. So, the second point, Noah trusted. Noah trusted God to bring the animals to the ark. And where do we see that is in Genesis chapter 7. It says, take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made. And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds, and of all creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. So, what an undertaking, right? So Noah builds this massive ark, and then he says, okay, God, now what? Now what do I do? Well, I want you to bring, we're going to bring animals on board. And I'm sure Noah was like, how are we going to do this, right? But God did it. So Noah had to trust that God would bring the animals. In looking at different numbers, I picked 16,000 animals were on the boat. I just shot for right in the middle. I saw 2,000, I saw 50,000. Anywhere you look, they talk about rail cars and freight trains and what could fit on the ark. I'm going to go with 16,000. That's a lot, right? That's a big number. But that's how many animals came on board the ark. And I can guarantee you, Noah did not know how to do that. I can guarantee he did not know how to call them. I can guarantee you when the animals showed up at the ark, he didn't even know where to put them. But the Lord provided, and the Lord brought the animals into the ark. So that's the second one, is that Noah trusted God to bring the animals. Third point is that Noah waited patiently on the Lord in the ark. And before we get into the text here on this one, I think this is one of the hardest parts to do, is to wait. Sometimes when we are waiting in our faith journey, whatever that is, yes, we're called to be actively waiting and not to be passive and do nothing. But oftentimes it's hard to do something. Sometimes you feel like you just want to do nothing. So let's see what Noah did. Genesis chapter 7. It says, "The animals going in were male and female of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut him in. For 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth. And as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth." Excuse me. "The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. Every living thing that moved on land perished, birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. But God remembered Noah, and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded." So this is the point where I look at this and I said, this must have been an actually really, really hard time to actively wait for God. But God remembered Noah, and we see that in chapter 8, verse 1. It says, God remembered Noah. Noah had the potential to absolutely do nothing, right? He could have done nothing in there, but he didn't. Some of the things, it doesn't really go into details in the Bible what Noah actually did, but I threw up a couple things here that I think that Noah may have done, right? Noah had to have been in constant prayer with the Lord. After all, the Lord got them there, right? So that the Lord told him to build an ark. So now Noah's like, okay, God, I'm in the ark. Now what, So God carried him through prayer. Noah also had to take care of his family. He also had to take care of the animals. I'm sure the animals were not completely self-reliant on each other throughout that process. I'm sure there was cleaning to be done, feeding to be done. And essentially, the way I put it is that Noah was the captain, right? He was the captain of this vessel. So he was in charge of what was going on. But in thinking about all that, okay, yeah, so Noah was actively waiting, but he really wasn't doing much. Well, you think about all those things that had to be done. Those are the day-to-day, mundane, ordinary things that Noah had to do throughout this ark journey. But yet Noah had to trust in the Lord even through these times. So we even revert back to our second key point that Noah trusted, right? Noah trusted God even through his waiting. But we see that there is actually more action that Noah did on the ark. And I'm going to read from Genesis chapter 8, verses 6 through 12. His action continues. We see that after 40 days, Noah opened a window he had made in the ark and sent out a raven, and it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground. But the dove could find nowhere to perch because there was water over all the surface of the earth. So it returned to Noah in the ark. He reached out his hand and took a dove and brought it back to himself in the ark. He waited 7 more days and again sent out the dove from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Then Noah said that the water had receded from the earth. He waited 7 more days and sent out the dove again, but this time it did not return. So we see that that Noah sent out a raven, and the raven came back. Then he sent out a dove. The dove came back. Okay, he waited 7 more days, sent out another dove. Yay, dove returns the olive branch, right? So we know that there's land, or some form of land out there. Waited 7 more days. He sent out a dove again. At this time, it did not return. Key point, that the waters were in fact receding. So Noah waited a total of 361 days on the ark through this time. Awful long time, just under a year, right? So how is our faith strengthened through waiting? I thought of 3 key points here that we can learn from Noah's active waiting through his process. 1, waiting can allow us to grow in our faith by relying on God through the process, right? So we can actually, like I said, waiting can allow us to grow in our faith. So every time we go through a waiting process, we can learn from it. And the next time we go through something, we can say, hey, I remember that waiting time. Oh yeah, I did it this way, or I trusted in God this way, and he carried me through. Second point, waiting can also be the reminder of what we endured to get through our situation and the process of waiting and trusting in the Lord. I like this one because it shows us thankfulness to God. It also shows that we need God, right? So we can always look back and see what we went through and that God carried us through and be thankful for that. And then lastly, our faith can be strengthened through waiting by allowing us to equip ourselves to help others who may be going through similar situations. And I know we all have those people in our lives right now that may be going through tough times. But through our waiting process, we can help them with our experiences. So I want to close today with another shot here of my parents' house. This one was taken in May, the following year, May 2013. And as you can see, it actually kind of looks like an ark getting built. But the house had to get raised. And this was a tough time for my parents. I know that for a fact, and that they had to deal with a lot of stuff. They didn't just sit back and do nothing. A lot of bureaucratic red tape, permits, insurance companies they had to deal with. They had to deal with changing building codes. That was a big one. Building codes constantly were changing now because of the new storm, and they didn't want to get caught like that again, so they had to introduce new building codes. And they also were doing all this without a home the whole time. They were kind of moving around from place to place with no place to live. Yet they endured, they trusted in God, and they got it done. And the final picture here is the same house, only jacked up about, I don't know, I'd say 4.5 feet or so. And like chapter 8, verse 1 says, is that God blessed Noah. In this sense, God blessed my parents as well through their faith walk with him. So my 3 closing points. What are you building? Are you building relationships with others through this? Are you building like Noah built the ark? Are you actively doing? Secondly, what are you trusting in? Are you trusting in the things of the world to get you through a trial or a tribulation? Or are you relying on God? And thirdly, what are you waiting on? Are you waiting on a false idea that the world says, don't worry, this will go away, or waiting on something that a friend may have said, this happened to me, so this, and that? Or are you waiting on God? I want to kind of jump parallel real quick with that. I think these 3 points can definitely apply to our faith walk with Christ as well. And for those of you who are in the audience today listening to me and maybe have no idea what I'm talking about, or you're here for the first time and you want to know what it is to have a relationship with Christ, we can pose these 3 questions. Are you seeking to build a relationship with Christ? Are you seeking to trust Jesus as your personal Savior? And if you're asking these questions to yourself, can I encourage you to either come to me afterward and talk to me about what that means to have a personal relationship with Christ, or talk to the person that maybe brought you, or in the Welcome Center in the back. They'd be more than happy to help you with that. Isaiah 40, verse 31 says, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall walk and not be weary. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint." I pray today that we can renew our strength by waiting on the Lord, just as Isaiah put it, but also as Noah practiced it. Let's pray. Let's close with a word of prayer, and there will not be a final song. Dear Lord, I just want to thank you today for the opportunity we have to open your word and learn a little bit about Noah and his faith walk with you. Father, I pray that we can take away from this a way to learn to actively wait on you through our faith journey, Father. Lord, I know some of our faith journeys may be exciting ones with a blessing at the end, but most of us maybe, Lord, are going through a journey right now where we have to trust in you because of something that we're going through that's extremely difficult. Either way, Father, you ask us to wait on you, and you ask us to be doers, not just people that sit around and do nothing. I pray for those, Lord, in the room today that may not know you as their personal Savior. I pray that you would convict their hearts, that they may come to know you. Thank you for this day, Lord. and just keep us safe this week. In your name I pray.